The palace shook with the sound of the alien queen's roar. The walls, carved from black stone and silver veins, trembled as her fury spread through the air like fire. Her voice was sharp, filled with pain and anger. The great hall that once echoed with songs of victory now shook with fear. Servants ran and guards froze, for they all knew when the queen was angry, death was never far. Her steps were heavy, claws clicking against the floor. Her long tail lashed like a whip, cutting grooves into the stone. Her crown of living crystal flickered as if even it feared her rage. Her golden eyes burned as she shouted again, "Where are they, my daughters? Where are they?" Her voice was not only rage, but also the voice of a mother whose heart was breaking. She stormed into the royal chamber, tearing curtains apart. Her talons ripped through silken cloth and shattered glass vessels. The room was empty, the small beds cold. The queen bent down, pressing her hand against the sheets. She closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. She could smell them, faint traces of her children, their sweet scent still clinging to the fabric. But the warmth was gone. They had been gone for hours, maybe longer. The queen stood, shaking with rage. Her guards entered, heads bowed low. "My queen," one began, voice trembling. "We searched the halls, the gates, the sky platforms. There is no trace of the princesses." The queen's tail cracked against the floor, splitting the stone. Like thin ice, sparks flew as her claws carved lines into the walls. "You are useless," she roared. "My blood, my flesh, stolen from under my nose, and you give me excuses." The guards fell to their knees, some shaking, others silent, none daring to meet her eyes. The queen turned away, her chest rising and falling like a storm. She went to the great window of her chamber. Beyond the palace walls stretched her empire, towers reaching the clouds, flying ships glittering in the dark sky. But none of it mattered now. Not the empire, not the throne, not the riches of 100 worlds. Her daughters were missing, and her heart was burning with fear. She slammed her fists against the window frame, shards of crystal falling like rain. She remembered their laughter, the way the youngest clung to her hand, the way the eldest asked endless questions about stars. They were her light, her reason. Without them, the throne was an empty chair. Her roars turned into a low growl, echoing through the city. Citizens, far below, lifted their heads, hearing the pain of their queen. Some trembled, others whispered, for never before had they heard such sorrow in her mighty voice. She paced the chamber, her mind racing. Who had dared to take them? Was it rebels who hated her rule? Was it traitors hungry for ransom? Or was it humans, those strange creatures her council always warned about? They were known for tricks, for stealing, for surviving in places where others would fall. The thought of humans near her daughters made her claws tighten, sparks flying again as she dragged them across the stone floor. Her advisors rushed in, robes fluttering. They spoke in soft voices, offering plans, but the queen silenced them with one glare. She did not want politics. She did not want strategies or meetings. She wanted her children alive. She wanted the thief's throat under her claws. Her chest heaved. But then she stopped suddenly. Her eyes narrowed. For deep inside, her heart, she could still feel a bond, a mother's bond, a faint pull like a thin string. It told her they were alive. It told her they were afraid. It told her they were far from her reach. She hissed, a sound like tearing metal. "I will find you," she whispered, voice breaking. "My little stars, I will find you no matter the cost." The queen turned back to her guards. Her eyes glowed brighter, her fury shaping into deadly purpose. "Prepare the ships," she commanded. "Burn the skies if you must, search every world, tear open every cave. I will not rest, I will not eat. I will not breathe until they are in my arms again." Her voice thundered through the palace, shaking the hearts of everyone present. The guards scrambled to obey, fear and loyalty driving their steps. The queen stood alone for a moment, staring at the empty beds. Her claws softened as she touched one of the pillows. She closed her eyes, breathing in the faint memory of her daughters. For a second her rage broke and only a mother's sorrow remained. A single tear slid down her scaled cheek. shining like liquid crystal. Then she stood tall once more. Her crown pulsed with light. Her armor shimmered. Her rage had become a storm, unstoppable. The galaxy would hear her roar, and the thief who dared to touch her daughters would know true terror. The Queen's fleet rose into the dark sky. Engines burned blue fire as warships tore through the clouds. The night over her capital was filled with thunder. Citizens knelt on the streets watching the sky split open, knowing their queen would not rest until her daughters were found. Her roar still echoed in their ears, a sound that would haunt them for generations. Inside the command chamber of her flagship, the Queen stood tall, surrounded by maps of the galaxy. Her golden eyes burned with fury and focus. Dozens of scouts sent reports, streams of data flowing across the glowing screens, but each ended the same. No trace. The trail was cold, as if someone had carefully erased it. The Queen's claws tapped. Against the table, a sound like knives scraping stone. Her advisors dared not speak. They feared her wrath, but they feared even more the sorrow twisting inside her heart. "Search again," she ordered, her voice low but heavy. "Every orbit, every tunnel, every shadow. Find me something." At last, a scout stepped forward, his armor dented from rushing through storm winds. He bowed low, voice shaking. "My queen, I followed the outer trails near the edge of the frozen wastes. The signals were faint, but there was a trace. Not of your daughters directly, but of something else." The Queen's eyes snapped to him, sharp as blades. "Speak," she demanded. The scout swallowed hard. "Human smoke, my queen. The smell of iron and ash, the kind that comes from their crude machines and fire pits. I swear it upon my life." The chamber grew still, a silence so deep that even the engines seemed to hold their breath. The Queen's tail lashed once, striking the floor. The sound cracked like thunder. "Humans," she hissed. Her lips curled back, revealing sharp fangs. "I should have known. They crawl like insects into places they do not belong, always scavenging, always surviving." She turned to her generals, her voice growing louder. "If they have touched my daughters, if they have breathed near them, I will burn their bones to dust." The generals nodded, their faces grim. None dared question her, none spoke of caution, for the Queen's fury was a river that could not be stopped. She raised her claw, pointing at the star map. "Take us to the frozen wastes. We will follow the human trail, and if it leads nowhere, then we will search further, until the galaxy itself has no shadows left to hide in." The fleet shifted course, engines blazing as they moved into the deep void. Outside, stars shimmered cold and endless. The Queen stood near the wide viewing glass, staring at the infinite dark. Her mind burned with memory. She remembered the faint pull of her daughters, a bond that still lived in her chest. She could feel them, alive, trembling, somewhere far ahead. It was the only thing keeping her from falling apart. Her guards stood silent, armor gleaming in the pale light. But in their hearts they whispered fears, for to follow humans into the wastes was dangerous. Humans were strange. They survived in ruins, in swamps, in frozen cliffs where no other race dared to step. They used tricks. They vanished like smoke. And when cornered, they fought like cornered beasts. It was said even one human could outlast 10 hunters, but none spoke these fears aloud. For the Queen's rage was a fire greater than any doubt. Hours passed, the fleet cutting across empty space. At last, sensors picked up faint energy traces. Not ships, not cities, but something smaller, a camp, hidden in the folds of a wild world. The Queen leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Closer," she commanded. The screens sharpened, showing forests blanketed in mist, rivers glowing faintly under alien moons. And there, almost invisible, was the faint line of smoke, curling up into the night sky. The Queen's claws dug into the railing. Her breath came heavy, her body trembling with both hope and fury. "They are there," she whispered. "I can feel it." Her daughters were near. The bond in her chest grew stronger, beating faster, pulling her forward like a chain. She turned to her warriors, her voice thundering again. "Prepare the hunters, we go down now. I will see with my own eyes who holds my children. And if it is humans, the stars themselves will weep for them." The fleet lowered, ships cutting through the clouds like knives. Lightning flashed as the Queen's vessel broke into the world's sky. The trees shook. The rivers foamed. Beasts fled into caves as the roar of engines split the night. Inside the chamber, the Queen's eyes gleamed. Her rage had found a direction. Her sorrow had found a target. She would follow this silent trail to the end, and whoever dared to touch her daughters would learn the meaning of true fear. Far from the noise of the Queen's fleet, deep inside a quiet forest, a small fire burned low. Its glow lit the face of a lone human, his eyes sharp yet gentle. His clothes were torn, patched many times, his hands rough from work and scars, but steady as they held a wooden bowl against his chest wrapped in a thick cloth, lay two small alien children. Their skin shimmered faintly with patterns of soft light, like stars under their skin. Their eyes were closed, their breathing slow. They slept soundly, pressing close to the warmth of the human. He moved carefully, making sure not to wake them. Every sound of the forest, crickets, rustling leaves, distant rivers, he listened to with sharp focus. For he knew danger could come at any moment. He lifted the bowl to his lips, tasting the thin broth he had made from forest roots and wild herbs. It was bitter, but it kept him alive. He tilted the bowl, dipping a cloth into it. Then he carefully touched it to the lips of the youngest child. The little one stirred, eyes half opening, glowing faint blue. She made a soft sound, almost a cry. But when she saw the human's face, her hand reached weakly to grip his shirt. He smiled faintly, whispering, "It's all right, little one, you're safe." The child drank, then drifted back to sleep. The older sister shifted too, curling tighter into the human's chest, her small hand gripping his sleeve like she never wanted to let go. He lowered his head, his messy hair falling into his eyes. A shadow of sadness passed over his face. "Where is your mother?" he whispered softly. "Why were you left alone in that cage?" The memory returned to him, sharp and heavy. He had found them days ago, locked in a slaver's trap made of metal netting. Their cries had been weak, their skin dim, hunger eating away at their strength. The slavers had been careless, leaving them while they went hunting for more prey. The human had cut the net, his knife flashing in the dark. He had carried the girls away, hiding them under his coat, risking his life every step. He had fought off beasts, climbed cliffs, crossed freezing rivers just to keep them hidden. He had fed them what little he found, roots, berries, thin stew boiled in a battered tin. He had kept the fire burning small so no one would see the smoke. But even with all his care, he knew someone would come looking. The human sat quietly, listening to the crackle of the fire. His eyes moved to the sky. Stars shimmered brightly, too bright. He frowned. He had lived long enough on war worlds to know when the sky was not natural. There was something above the forest. Ships, maybe. Moving slowly. Scanning. He tightened his arms around the children. His heartbeat quickened. The older child stirred, her glowing eyes opening just a little. She looked up at him, her voice a whisper, weak but clear. "Safe," she said, as if asking him. The human nodded, his voice steady though his chest ached. "Safe, as long as I breathe." She pressed her head back into his chest, her small light warming his scarred skin. The forest around him was alive with sound. Owls called, branches creaked, but beneath it all he heard something else. A low rumble, faint at first, then stronger. Like thunder that never faded, he knew that sound. He had heard it on battlefields. It was engines, great engines. He closed his eyes for a moment, his jaw tightening. "They've come," he whispered. He stood slowly, careful not to wake the younger child. He shifted both daughters in his arms, wrapping them tighter in his coat. His knife hung at his side, his only weapon. He looked at the small fire, its last flames dying into smoke. He crushed it under his boot, leaving only ash. He could not leave a trail, not when something so powerful was in the sky above. The night grew colder, mist crawling between the trees. The human moved silently, his steps light but sure. He had lived as a soldier, a survivor, and now a guardian. He pressed his back against a tree, watching the stars flicker as shadows crossed them. His grip tightened on the children. His heart pounded with fear, but stronger than fear was his will. He had promised himself. These children would not be taken again. The older child shifted, her eyes opening once more. She whispered a word he did not understand, soft and broken. Then she pressed her glowing hand to his chest, as if she trusted him more than her own blood. Tears stung his eyes. He had lost many things in his life, friends, family, home, but he would not lose them, not while he still had breath. Above the trees, thunder rolled again. The Queen's ships were drawing near, their lights cut through the clouds like knives. The human looked up once more, his face grim, his voice a whisper, almost a vow. Come if you must, I will not give them up, not to you, not to anyone. In the quiet forest, the bond between a human and two alien daughters burned brighter than the stars above, and the night waited, holding its breath, for the storm that was about to fall. The forest trembled long before the humans saw the ships. Leaves shook loose from branches, animals darted into burrows, birds rose in frightened swarms, the ground quaked under the force of engines above. A deep rumble filled the night like the voice of a mountain waking from its sleep. The human pulled the children tighter against his chest, pressing his back to the trunk of an old tree. His heart pounded not only from fear but from the knowledge that the moment he had dreaded was here. Through the clouds, fire streaked, burning trails of blue and gold. The Queen's ships descended. Like falling stars, each vessel was shaped like a spearhead, sharp and bright. Thunder rolled as they cut the sky apart. The human shielded the girls with his coat, but the older one peeked out, her glowing eyes wide. She whispered something, in her alien tongue. Soft but full of fear, he hushed her gently. Stay quiet, little star. Stay close to me. The largest ship landed in the clearing beyond the trees. Its weight shook the ground, splitting earth, tearing roots apart. From its belly came the sound of metal grinding open. A ramp unfolded, slamming against the soil with a crash. Smoke and light poured out, and then she appeared. The alien queen. Her figure towered over all. Her crown of crystal pulsed with light. Her armor gleamed like molten silver. Her golden eyes burned like fire. She stepped down slowly, her claws digging into the earth. Her tail swung behind her like a living blade. Around her marched hunters, armored and armed, their spears glowing, their eyes sharp and merciless. She raised her head and roared. The sound tore through the trees, shaking, branches splitting bark. Birds dropped from the sky in shock. The human felt it in his chest, his bones rattling. His arms tightened around the children. He stood, his legs heavy but firm, his eyes locked on the Queen. The Queen's gaze swept the forest, her senses sharp. Her voice thundered, I smell them, my daughters, I feel them. She stepped forward, every movement a storm. The children stirred, the youngest whimpering, her glow brightening as if she could sense her mother's nearness. The human's jaw tightened. He stepped out of the shadows, carrying the two small forms in his arms. The firelight from the ships lit his face, showing his scars, his weary eyes, his steady grip. The Queen's eyes snapped to him, her roar cut short, replaced by a growl deep and low. The hunters raised their spears, but the Queen lifted her claw, stopping them. Her eyes burned into the human. You dare, she spat, her voice dripping with fury. You dare touch what is mine. The human's voice was steady, though his chest thundered. I did not take them, he said. I saved them. The Queen snarled, her claws flexing. Lies, humans are thieves, scavengers, parasites. Her tail lashed, splitting. The earth, give them to me now, or I will tear your heart out. The children stirred at her voice, their small heads lifting, their eyes glowed softly. They reached toward her, but then clung tighter to the human's shirt, refusing to let go. The Queen froze, her breath caught. Her golden eyes flickered with something besides rage, confusion, sorrow. She had expected them to leap to her, but instead they pressed their tiny hands deeper into the human's chest, hiding against him. She stepped closer, her shadow falling over them. The human did not move. His legs were shaking, but he stood tall, his voice low but firm. "If you want them safe, you'll hear the truth." The hunters shifted uneasily. They had never seen a human stand against their queen, not without trembling, not without begging. But this one stood, with nothing but his arms and his will. The queen lowered her head, her teeth bared inches from him. Her hot breath brushed his face. "Speak," she hissed, "but if your words are empty, I will end you where you stand." The human swallowed, his arms cradling the children, his voice calm. "I found them in chains, trapped like animals. Slavers left them to die. I cut them free. I carried them here. I fed them. I kept them alive. That is why they cling to me, not because I stole them, but because I kept them breathing when no one else did." The queen's eyes widened. Her daughters whimpered again, one reaching out to her, the other burying her face against the human's neck. The queen's chest rose and fell heavily. Her claws trembled, torn between rage and the truth standing before her. The forest held its breath. The hunters waited, their weapons glowing. The engines above hummed low, and in that clearing, under two moons, a mother and a human faced each other, neither willing to step back, neither willing to yield. The clash of worlds had begun. The queen stood frozen in the clearing. Her claws were raised, her armor shone like fire under the moons. But her body did not strike. Her golden eyes locked on the human, on the fragile bundles pressed to his chest. Her daughters, her stars, alive yet trembling. The hunters behind her shifted uneasily. Their spears glowed with light, but even they sensed something strange. This was not a battlefield. This was not a raid or a conquest. This was a moment of truth, and the forest itself seemed to hold its breath. The human's words lingered in her mind, sharp as knives. "I found them in chains. I kept them alive." Rage boiled in her chest, but doubt crept in like poison. She remembered the scent of slaver ships that sometimes crept at the edges of her empire. She remembered whispers of traders who dared to sell even royal blood if they could. Her claws trembled. For the first time, she wondered if the human spoke truth. The younger daughter whimpered softly. Her tiny hand reached out, glowing faint, reaching for her mother but still pressed against the human's chest. The queen stepped forward, lowering her head. Her voice shook, torn between command and sorrow. Why would you, a human, risk your life for mine?" The human stood steady, though his legs ached from fear, his voice low but filled with weight. "Because they were children, because no one else came, because I could not walk away." His scars glistened in the firelight, his hands tightened around the girls. He did not flinch under her burning gaze. The queen's breath caught. Her rage fought her heart, for she had always seen humans as scavengers, creatures of dirt and trickery. Yet here stood one who held her children like treasures. His voice carried no deceit, only pain and tired truth. One of the hunters stepped forward, his spear raised. "My queen, do not trust him. He is human. They lie. They deceive. They survive on weakness." The queen's tail lashed, striking the earth with a crack that silenced the forest. She roared at the hunter. "Do you call me blind? Do you think I cannot see my own daughter's eyes?" The children stirred at her roar, their eyes opening wider. They looked at her, glowing like little suns. But when the hunters moved closer, both clung tighter to the human. One buried her face in his neck, the other wrapped her fingers around his sleeve. The queen's heart broke. She felt it, sharp and deep. Her daughters feared her guards, not the human. Tears welled in her golden eyes, shimmering against the firelight. She stepped closer, her claws slowly lowering, her voice softer now, breaking. "They should run to me. They should trust me. Yet, they hold you why?" Her words were not anger now, but sorrow. The human's voice was steady. "Because when they were starving, I fed them. When they were cold, I held them close. When they cried, I stayed awake and sang to them until sleep came. I gave what little I had, not because I wanted reward, not because I wanted power, but because no one else would. The queen's chest heaved. A tear slipped down her cheek, tracing her scales like liquid gold. Her crown flickered dimly, as if even it bent under the weight of her grief. She fell to her knees, the earth cracking under her strength. The hunters gasped, for never had they seen their queen kneel. Her voice shook as she whispered, "I failed them." She lowered her head, claws digging into the soil. I, the Queen of Worlds, the ruler of stars, could not protect my own blood and a human. A stranger carried them when I did not. The daughters stirred again. One reached her hand toward her mother, trembling but hopeful. The queen lifted, her eyes meeting the humans for the first time. Her gaze held not fury but gratitude. Her voice broke. "You should be my enemy, yet you saved what I love most. Why would you do this?" The human lowered his head, his voice barely above. A whisper. "Because I lost once, long ago, I lost family. I could not let these children suffer the same." His words struck her like lightning, for in his pain she heard her own. Silence fell heavy over the clearing. The hunters lowered their weapons, unsure. The trees stood still, the moons watched, and in that fragile moment an alien queen and a human soldier understood one another, not through power, not through fear, but through shared loss and love. The queen reached out slowly, her massive claw trembling as it hovered near her daughters. She whispered their names, the syllables breaking in her throat. The children cried softly, one pressed against her finger, the other still holding the human's sleeve. Torn between mother and savior, the truth had been revealed. The queen saw it clearly now. The human was no thief, no parasite. He was the reason her daughters still breathed. He was the reason they had lived through hunger and chains, and though it burned her pride, it softened her soul. The forest exhaled. The night seemed lighter, and the queen, once full of fury, now sat in sorrow and awe. The human stood before her, steady as stone, the daughters between them, a living bridge. The war she had prepared to start faded in that moment, replaced by something deeper, something she had never thought possible. The clearing was silent. The hunters stood frozen, their weapons lowered. Their eyes darted between their queen and the human. The great forest seemed to hold its breath as if the trees themselves waited to see what would happen next. The queen knelt on the ground, her claws sunk into the soil, her golden eyes glistened, with tears that shimmered in the moonlight. Her daughters were alive, close enough for her to touch, yet they clung to the arms of a human. The sight cut her deeper than any blade. It was not anger that tore her now, but shame. The human stood steady, the children wrapped against his chest. His face was calm but weary. His arms trembled from holding them so long, yet he did not loosen his grip. He watched the queen carefully, knowing one wrong step could end his life. Still, he did not back away. The older child raised her head, her glowing eyes flicking between her mother and the human. She made a soft sound, not quite words, but full of longing. Her little fingers reached toward the queen, then curled tighter into the human's shirt. Torn between two worlds, between the mother who gave her life and the stranger who saved it, the queen's voice broke the silence, softer now. "Come to me, my stars, come back to your mother." Her words trembled like fragile glass. Her claw stretched out, gentle for the first time, not the weapon of a ruler, but the hand of a mother. But the daughters did not leap into her arms. Instead, the younger whimpered and pressed her glowing face deeper into the human's chest. The older one reached halfway toward her mother, then stopped, looking up at the human as if seeking permission. The queen saw this and her heart shattered. Her children trusted him more than her. Tears streamed down her scaled cheek. Her voice shook. "They do not fear you. They fear me, their own mother." How could it come to this? The human spoke quietly, his voice firm but kind. "It is not fear of you. It is fear of what they have endured. Hunger, chains, nights in the cold. They learned to trust the arms that kept them warm. That does not erase their bond with you, but it has given them another bond, one born in suffering and care." The queen lowered her head. Her pride had been her crown, her throne, her armies. But now she saw clearly. Her pride had also blinded. She had trusted her guards and her empire, but not her own hands, and because of that, Her daughters had nearly been lost, she whispered. I failed them, and you carried them when I could not. The human's jaw tightened, his eyes softened. You did not fail. You were deceived. You were wounded where it hurts most. But they still live, and that is what matters now. The older child stirred again. She slid one glowing hand from his shirt and reached it toward her mother's claw. Her tiny fingers pressed against the sharp edge, not in fear, but in forgiveness. The queen gasped softly, her chest heaving. She turned her claw gently, letting the child rest in her palm. Her tears fell freely now, dropping onto the soil. The younger still clung to the human. Trembling softly, the queen looked at him, her voice breaking. She does not let go of you, not even for me. The human looked down at the small head pressed against him. He rubbed her back softly. She will, in time. But right now, she feels safest here. He looked back at the queen, his voice steady. You must not tear her away. Let her come to you in her own time. Let her trust grow back slowly. Trust is not commanded, it is earned. The queen's breath caught. Her pride as a ruler would have made her demand obedience. Yet the words rang true. Trust could not be ordered. It could only be given, freely. She nodded slowly, her claws trembling. Then I will wait. I will be patient for them. The hunters looked on in disbelief. Their queen, the fiercest warrior of their people, kneeling before a human and speaking words of patience. None dared to move, for they knew this moment was sacred. The older child leaned toward her mother now, slipping from the human's arm into the queen's claw, her glowing body so small against her mother's massive hand. The queen lifted her gently, pressing her close. Her voice cracked with joy and sorrow. My star, my light, you are back. But the younger one still held tight to the human, her small fingers gripping his coat. The queen looked at the human again, her eyes no longer burning with fury, but with respect. She trusts you as she trusts me. You are her shield as much as I am her blood. The human nodded, his arms tightening. Then we must both protect them. The queen lowered her head in agreement. Her crown dimmed. Her armor, no longer a sign of power but of weight, she whispered. For the first time, human, I bow. Dawn crept slowly over the forest. The first rays of light touched the clearing, turning the mist gold and silver. The queen stood tall now, but her heart was heavy. In one arm she cradled her eldest daughter, who had finally returned to her. Embrace. In the human's arms the youngest still rested, refusing to release her grip. Her tiny glowing fingers clutched his coat as if letting go meant death. The hunters waited in silence, their armor damp with morning dew. None spoke, for they knew they stood at the edge of history. Their queen had come roaring with fury, yet now she knelt beside a human, bound not by power but by something deeper. The queen's golden eyes softened as they met the human's. Her voice was low but steady. I came here ready to kill, to burn, to destroy everything in my path. I believed you had stolen what was mine. But I see now, you are the reason they are alive. Without you, my stars would be nothing but dust in the wind. The human shifted his hold on the younger child. His voice was calm but firm. I only did what anyone should. They were children, helpless, hungry. I gave what little I had, that is all. The queen studied him, her pride battling with gratitude. She had bowed to no one in all her reign, yet she felt something new stir inside her, not weakness, but respect. She lowered her head, her crown of crystal dimming. Then hear this, human, you saved my blood, my throne, my heart. For that I am in your debt. Gasps rose among the hunters. Never had their queen spoken such words. Debt was not for rulers. Debt was for the broken. Yet she declared it with fire in her voice, as if it were an oath carved into stone. The human shook his head, his voice soft. I need no debt. Keep them safe. That is enough. The queen's chest heaved. Her daughters stirred again. The elder curled tighter against her. The younger pressed her head against the human's chest. 2. Worlds divided by war and mistrust, now connected by the smallest of bonds. 2 children who belonged to both. The queen turned to her warriors. Her voice thundered, Lay down your spears, no blood will be spilled here, not today. The hunters obeyed at once, lowering their glowing weapons, their faces confused but obedient. The queen stepped forward, her eyes locked on the human. You could have left them, you could have sold them, you could have used them as ransom, yet you did none of these things. Tell me why. The human looked down at the sleeping child in his arms, his voice broke slightly. Because once, long ago, I lost someone I could not protect. That wound never healed when I saw them trapped, starving, afraid. I could not let it happen. Again, I swore they would live, even if it cost me my life. The queen felt her throat tighten. For in his words she heard echoes of her own fear. She had lost them once, and in that loss had nearly lost herself. She understood him now, not as human or alien, but as a soul bound by pain. She reached out her claw, slowly, gently, toward the younger child. The girl stirred, her glowing eyes blinking. She looked at her mother, then at the human. Her fingers loosened just a little, as if testing. The queen whispered, "Little star, you are safe now, with me, with us." Her voice was no longer command but promise. The child hesitated, then slid her hand into her mother's claw. Her tiny body still pressed against the human's chest, but her fingers curled around her mother's talon. In that fragile touch, the bond was shared, not broken. The queen's eyes filled again. Her tears fell onto the soil. She looked at the human, her voice firm. "Then it is decided you are not my enemy. You are part of this bond. My daughters trust you, and so must I." The hunters stared in disbelief. Some whispered, some bowed, for their queen had spoken the unthinkable. She had not only spared a human, she had honored him. The sun climbed higher, filling the clearing. With warmth, the queen lifted both daughters close, one in her arm, one still leaning against the human. She whispered, "I am their mother, but tonight, I see you are their shield. Perhaps fate joined us. Perhaps it wished to teach me that strength is not only in power but in mercy." The human stood silent, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had no crown, no throne, no army, yet he had won the trust of an alien queen in the hearts of her children. As the fleet above shimmered in the light of dawn, the queen raised her head high, her voice rang across the forest. "Remember this day, for it is the day I bowed not to war but to the mercy of a human." The hunters dropped to one knee. The forest echoed with their salute. The skies seemed to tremble with the weight of her words. The queen turned once more to the human, her voice quiet now. "Go where you will, but know this. If you ever call upon me, I will answer. For my daughters would not forgive me if I did otherwise." The human nodded. He looked down at the children, then at their mother. A faint smile touched his scarred face. He whispered, "Then they are safe, that is all I wanted." The queen's daughters, pressed between two worlds, two guardians, glowed brighter than ever. And as the sun rose, the war that almost was became something greater, an unspoken alliance born not from conquest but from love.